Hi, everyone, and welcome to Youth Amplified,
a podcast that inspires, empowers, and connects. I'm Brian.
And I'm Ronna. And in the spotlight today is multiculturalism under pressure in Australia.
Ronna, we're delighted to be joined by such a panel around the table. We've got Rewana, Arel, Sabina, Aruzhan, and multicultural leader Thiru Arumugam with us. A great panel, so let's kick things off.
Absolutely. Rewana, let's start with you. Now, how do you personally define multiculturalism in Australia today?
Well, I'd like to begin just by defining multiculturalism generally, and I guess that's just diverse cultures all in one space. And in Australia, I think multiculturalism is definitely one of our strongest assets. As a country that sort of survives on immigration, I think multiculturalism is definitely our strongest suit. In Australia, multiculturalism is certainly growing, but I hope to see more growth in the coming years.
Thanks very much.
That's right. Let's move right across the table, Ronna. Aruzhan, have you or people experienced discrimination, harassment, or even aggression based on culture, religion, or ethnicity?
Yeah, but certainly we can experience sometimes subtle discriminations. Even speaking from my own experience, despite being Kazakh, a lot of people misconcept me for being Russian, and sometimes there could be a language barrier, or because we have different tradition or cultures, it could be miscommunication. We might perceive that as a discrimination, but sometimes people have unconsciously bias or have decisions against us.
Arel, let's move to you. Do young people today feel safer expressing their cultural identity than previous generations? And if so, why or why not?
Well, younger people today do feel more comfortable with asserting their cultural identity. It's worth bearing in mind that around a third of all people in Australia are not born in Australia, or have at least one parent not born in Australia. So I think especially with younger generations who grew up with stuff like the internet, entering schools, entering universities, where it becomes more and more inevitable they will meet someone of a different cultural background. I think it's a lot more normalized among our generation, and especially there with people trying to assert their own form of individuality, saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm from this particular country." I do think there's it's definitely becoming more and more of a normal thing for the youth.
Sabina, tell us, what's one thing people always get wrong about your culture?
A lot of people think Filipinos are... There's a lot of stigma in terms of us being... having that crab mentality. So a lot of Filipinos continue to have a strong sense of community and pride within our culture, but whenever we experience other cultures, our differences can be so different that we just huddle together. However, I think that Filipinos have such a beautiful culture in terms of belonging and inclusivity, and I really value that about my culture, especially.
Anyone else want to add something that people always stuff up?
I would like to add, a lot of people don't know where my country is. They usually misconception for being Asian, particularly East Asian, and start talking about the cultures. And when they hear about my culture, they get totally confused because we are Central Asian with a Turkic culture. However, we speak a Russian language, and that's where they get really puzzled, asking, where is that? And they really get confused. Why do you look Asian but speak Russian? Which is really interesting.
And sometimes I have to give them a history lesson on top of that.
Yes, and they get bored. They're like, oh no, not a geography lesson.
For my community, it's an Indian community, the people perception is actually it's a closed group. Not really, because there are 120 languages and different groups of cultures, and they live peacefully in such a beautiful country. And we are open society, But when we came to Australia, then we are mingled with other people, but it's a multicultural country. We already experienced it back home.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, on the funny side, I'm from India as well. When I came, a really well-meaning lady stopped me on the road. We were having a chat, and she asked me whether I spoke Hindu. And I had to explain to her that Hindu was a religion and Hindi was actually the language.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? You shouldn't assume.
Yes.
All right, Rewana, we're back to you. Interested to hear whether fear-based politics or rising hate incidents have impacted the way you or your peers interact in public spaces or online.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, long story short, yes. The media, whether we like it or not, plays a very big role in the way that we associate with other people. My community specifically, we are from a sort of certain parts in Iraq and Iran, and coming from the Middle East, there's this conception that all Middle Easterns are Muslims, and this sort of rising political ideology that the Middle East they're not the best people. This is their sort of ideology, and obviously, yes, that does impact my community, especially because we are not a part of this association. It's not who we are. We don't associate with those communities. So when we hear this idea that we are not good individuals or we have bad history, it really affects the way that we associate with our own identities and then the way that we explain it to other people.
Thiru, tell me, what role do you think schools, universities, and local communities play in supporting multicultural youth?
That's the only hope I have in this country when I see all the youngsters, That's the only way we can come out of this type of, hate speeches. And, when I saw the kids, and my kids are actually mingled with the other communities freely without any, reservation, then I have big confidence that this country will stay as multicultural country forever.
I think it's really important that not only are the communities within schools inclusive, I think education about different cultures, different foods, all sorts of things like that are normalized, and that no discrimination is either taught at home or through the media, and that students continue to pursue friendships and community throughout, whether it be school or out of school. I think that's a really valuable thing to have in our society.
Well said.
Aruzhan,
Yes.
what changes would you like to see from leaders, policymakers, or society to make multiculturalism stronger?
I would also like to think to more how is it going to look in the practice and how we can make the merged communities and bring in more inclusivity and speaking not only for major ethnicities but also minor.
Thiru, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, the leaders should be more responsible, and the conversations has to be very respectfully, not impacting any divisions within the communities. And I think the leaders of who are leading this country at the same time the media and should play a part, and community leaders should play a part in, like how to bring communities together rather than playing divisive politics and political scoring on issues affecting globally, not in Australia. It's sometimes the narratives, what leaders speak in the media is actually creating divisions within the communities. And they need to have a respectful, reasonable conversations rather than creating divisions.
Arel, tell me, have you ever felt pressure to fit in instead of embracing your own culture?
Well, that's a bit of a complicated question because, obviously there's the fact that I wasn't born in Australia, but there's also, the fact that I also do feel kind of within two worlds. Like I do genuinely feel Australian, but also I am in touch with my Indonesian background. It's not so much that personally I feel pressured in order to like conform or assimilate in a certain way, but I think it's just navigating between those two because I talk to some of my mates who are just came from Indonesia, and there's sort of like a different air of like, yes, I'm sort of like you, but also not. So I guess to answer your question, it's a bit like an implicit sort of navigating between those two aspects of my identity, which I guess a lot of people can relate to.
What do you think, Rewana?
Personally, I'm very lucky and fortunate enough to have grown up in an area where a lot of my community resided in as well. So there wasn't really this concept of I had to fit in or I had to change something about myself in order to fit in. However, that was when I was younger. Now, since I have left that area growing up, moving on to university, it is sort of like not necessarily that I feel pressured, but I do notice a lot of differences. And because I do notice those differences, it's sort of stopping me from approaching certain people who I know I am not going to associate well with.
Thanks for your openness, Ronna. Okay, Sabina, let's move to you. Very interested to hear of a cultural tradition you'll never give up.
There's so many. Obviously, food. I think a really big part of Filipino culture is also faith. Faith is intertwined within our culture. Being Catholic in Australia and being able to express that freely and openly without discrimination or any prejudice is such a fortunate thing, because I know there's a lot of countries that oppress definitely certain religions, certain freedoms of expression. So that's definitely something that I can't ever see me giving up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Which actually brings me to my next question, Ronna, and that's to Thiru. Is freedom of speech sometimes used as an excuse for hate?
It's a legacy topic, right? Whichever the channel you open, they talk about this, freedom of speech. And recently, the New South Wales government passed a legislation on hate speech. And the both parties actually need to understand that there are limits. And when you talk about some culture, that there's a limit for you to go, without affecting or impacting someone's, belief or faith, then still acceptable. And there's a limit for that. That's a definition of multiculturalism. Is not like when I came from India or from Hindu culture that Australia will accept everything. Accepting everything is not multiculturalism. Accept your basic belief is the line mark. We need to see that. And freedom of speech there is a limit actually, where you can pitch and how you can go, how much you can go towards that thing. But now the media is trying to use that, in a different way, and even some responsible leaders are stereotyping and talking about particular community, and too much on that is completely, they need to understand. I think they need to go back to the basic school. What is freedom of speech and what is hate speech? And until then, they should be removed from the parliament. So that's a place where the country believe that systems will support every communities, but representatives actually guardians of that place, but they are now crossed the limit.
Yeah, we've got some potential lawyers in the room.
Right.
You guys want to throw your word into this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to bore you to death with this one. I think it's worth noting that freedom of speech legally is quite unique. In Australia, it's not found in the Constitution. There's sort of a vague protection of political communication that was found out by the judges actually less than 50 years ago, sometime in the 80s or 90s, Basically, what I'm trying to say is like the limits of free speech and hate speech in this country. It's still being worked out, and I think if there's going to be like any solid, I'm not going to make any recommendations to any legislators, obviously, but any like potential answers we should have on this question. It would involve, again, legislation, but also the community, standards of like, ethics and decency. And yeah, it's just probably going to be a question we're going to have to deal with for a fair bit of time.
How can young people lead the way when it comes to strengthening multiculturalism?
Through my personal experiences, I really like this question, by the way. So through my personal experiences, the best way to start with introducing yourself into leading in this field is through your school. I know I started with Harmony Day celebrations, just a very basic thing, saying a speech before our performances. And I think it's also very important to educate yourself on your culture. I mean, I know coming from the culture, you may think you know everything, but you certainly don't. Understanding your own history and then understanding how it's still influenced and practiced today is very important. And I think the biggest step that young people can do is to just take the first step. And a lot of people want what you want as well. They also want to be recognized and celebrated, but nobody's willing to take that first step. So it's really good. Just start, for instance, an Instagram page where you highlight some of the cool aspects of your culture. I know that's what I did, and it's working out really well.
I love those themes. Be humble, start with yourself, and just take action. Great.
Terrific. Let's go to the other end of the table. Aruzhan, what gives you hope about the future of multicultural Australia?
One of the favorite things about Australia when I moved here is how multicultural it is. When I moved first here, I met so many amazing people from all different countries, Japan, from all over the world that I have not met before. And the fact that we all live here together, we educate, going to education together, living and embracing our cultures together, this is what leads the way. And I feel like even the countries, we're all different, we all have all similarities, and we should all embrace it because we all have similar characteristics and we all should embrace it and encourage it.
There's so much hope in this world, especially with social media. I find that with our ability to express ourselves freely on social media, there's a lot more opportunity to represent our cultures, especially the parts that not many people see apart from stereotypes. So that's a really beautiful thing to see.
Yes, there are differences in cultural practices, maybe like in diet and like beliefs, but at the end of the day, we probably have more in common with each other than what we have the differences. And I think the fact that, yes, you may be from X country, but you're also Australian. I'm from Y country, but I'm also Australian. I think that just speaks to like the reality of multiculturalism. It's just more of an idea. It's just, a fact of daily life. And personally, that's what gives me hope.
I completely agree once again with what Jay said. Yeah, I think certainly what gives us hope to the future of multiculturalism in Australia is the fact that no matter what country you come from, if you're here in Australia, you can say that you are Australian. And 90% of the time, no one's going to question you, but it's that 10% who will question you and will say, oh, but you don't look Australian. That definitely does hold us back. But yeah, other than that, I think there is hope.
What gives me the hope is younger generation. So in schools, universities, workplaces, people come together and encourage others to, follow the faith and, celebrate the festivals. And it's a big hope in my mind. But at times, actually, the things go in other direction is actually the multiculturalism on attack. And it's good to have it's heated in the public, and it's good that everyone is watching what's happening, and we're not simply celebrating, and we have some responsibility also to retain this nation as the best multicultural country in the world.
And you know what? We're all human. That's what connects us together. So it's not about our nationalities, ethnicities. It's about us being human and being collected in our humanities.
Yes. Yeah. Well, on that happy note, the subject we can talk on and on and on about, but the clock tells me otherwise. So thank you, Rewana, Arel, Sabina, Aruzhan, and Thiru for joining us today.
Till next fortnight, let's continue to inspire, empower, and connect. And remember, your
Your voice matters.